And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right. I said welcome back because I know you were just listening to our stuff and you loved it so much you came back for more. Well, that was brilliant of you because we have a lot more for you. Now, why do we have so much more for you? Because this is the podcast that's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. And our guest today is, wait for it, a podcaster. You cracked the code. You really are brilliant. Folks, this is where we all come together to raise each other up, and this is the place where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So let's get sailing and bring in our guest today. We have a fantastic lady on with us today. I've really enjoyed talking with her in our, mini pre-interview right before the show starts. And I tell you what, you're going to love this. She is the host of multiple podcasts. The first one, Taking Back Monday. And then the other one, The Growth Signal. We're going to let her tell you about both of those. Please welcome to the show, Alyssa Nolte. Alyssa, how you doing today?
I am living the dream. We are going to have a great conversation today. I can't wait.
Living the dream. I love that. All right, perfect. Okay, as we get rolling, that's a real simple way to start. Who is Alyssa Nolte? Everybody wants to know that. What's your story? Kind of how'd you end up doing this sort of thing?
I have a very sarcastically traditional story coming up. I was about to graduate college and I had two job offers in hand. I had one where I was going to be an agency director and I was going to, climb the ranks, make a lot of money, have all the traditional benefits. And then I had a second offer to be an executive director for a regional nonprofit. And, sitting there in hand with two really great offers, I had something that a lot of students that I was graduating with didn't have. And I came across these two college professors who were starting a brand new business and launching a startup that was going to use eye tracking technology to understand how people saw marketing. How did you see that commercial? How do we see through their eyes to see what they're paying attention to and what they're ignoring? And I became fascinated with this technology because my background was in marketing psychology, and I loved to have conversations about how people made purchase decisions. How do we buy these things? How did we consume the world around us? And so I did what every college student would do. I turned down two full-time job offers with an actual salary and benefits and wages and security and healthcare. And I took the unpaid full-time role with a pre-revenue startup that had never had a customer in their lives with two college professors who'd only ever worked in academia. And I was 100% commission only. I would eat what I killed. And by the way, I'd never had like a grown-up job before, so I didn't have a network and I never really sold anything before. So looking back, I really cannot believe that I did that. But it turned into the most fantastic career that has led me to the most incredible people. It all worked out in the end after much blood, sweat, tears, and more tears. And, it led me to podcasting and conversations like this. So I can't be mad at it.
I love the story. I'm a serial entrepreneur myself, so I totally get the idea here. But I gotta know. I mean, that sort of entrepreneurial flame comes from somewhere. I don't know where necessarily. With everybody, it's different. But I mean, self-proclaimed here. You came out of college, you had the stuff, you had the safe jobs right in front of you. What was going on in your head and your heart that said, I need to go follow this like brand new, untested, unproven, I got nothing behind me, but here I go jumping off the cliff kind of mentality? I love it. But what was going on in your head and your heart when you did that?
I waited for a long time, to be honest with you. If it wasn't for the incredible people that I had in my circle who almost gave me permission, right? So I was married to a CPA, the most stable, boring job on the planet. And he said, I'm going to go get my master's degree. So let's just go ahead and try this. And I'm always going to have a job. Everybody needs a CPA. My dad was a high level executive at HP, did the traditional corporate path. And he always had that interest in entrepreneurship, but took the safe route, if you will. And I was talking about these offers, and he said, Alyssa, you're in college right now. There's no better time to go try this because what's the worst thing that happens? You get in on the ground floor of something great and it turns into an incredible opportunity, or it utterly fails and you've never really known what it's like to have actual money anyway. So you might as well try it now before you go to a real career, make six figures, and then get the opportunity and have to decide to give that up and walk away from the stability. You don't know what stability is. And so it was almost my family's and my loved ones' permission to go try it, that gave me that get up and go for it. And then, of course, over time, hindsight being 2020, I realized that one of my core values is what I call the thrill of the solve. I love solving problems. I love being the first one to break something down and to figure it out and to take it apart. I would never call myself like an engineering mind because I don't have the put it like the discipline to keep it going. But I do love the experience of we have a problem, nobody knows how to solve it. How can we break this down in the most creative way possible? And that's really what entrepreneurship is about, is seeing problems and finding solutions that actually help people solve their problems.
Wow. I mean, that's a blessing to have a family behind you like that, even your husband. Okay.
Yeah, even the CPA accountant who you would think would be like, you need a real job because I'm going to college one more year and someone has to pay for that, and I'm going to be working and taking classes full time. So,
Right. That's exactly what you would think. Yeah, but he went the other way and said, "Hey, I've got the stable part covered.
yeah,
Go chase this. Go for it."
you go do your thing. Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, that's wonderful. Okay, so you chase this. Now you said it's eye tracking technology. I mean, you can't
Yes.
hear that and not come back to it. So, yeah, you got to tell me about that a little bit. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, so I always tell people it is like if you picture those old Mac computers back when we were all in like elementary school and junior
Oh yeah.
high, the colored backs, right? It looks like one of those old school computers, but what it really is a super advanced computer screen that has high definition cameras and infrared light above and below it. And it uses that infrared light, it bounces it back off the back of your retina, uses the cameras to triangulate what you're looking at. And so I can tell you when someone is on a website, this is where they got caught up. This is where they stumbled across a word. This is where they exhibited confusion. This is where they started to scan and they were no longer actually looking at what you were presenting. And so by doing that, that happens in less than a fifth of a second. So we aren't actually able to say, you know, Rory, what did you look at? What did you pay attention to? What was important to you? Right? We can only look at that in the past and say, well, I think maybe I was looking at the pricing, but I can tell you definitively through eye tracking, Rory, you actually looked at this, this, and this, and this before you ever even gave the pricing a glance. And to be able to understand and literally
Wow.
see through the eyes of your customers what they care about and what they don't care about, what they're looking at and what they're ignoring. That can be really powerful information for a business who's trying to get people to follow a path without having to be handheld by a salesperson or to convince them to do something. So, with this company, with this technology, I've worked with some of the largest companies in the world. I've worked on presidential campaigns. I've helped people who are creating direct mail figure out how do we get the most important information into your visual perception from the mailbox to the trash can as you walk across the house. And we can do all of that and see all of that using this eye tracking technology.
That's just absolutely fascinating. I mean, I've been in sales and marketing my entire life, and I've like heard about something like this, but
Yeah.
I always just thought it was like folklore or
Right.
a wish
It
list.
almost feels like sci-fi sometimes when you talk about it.
Very.
But it has been around for a really long time in academia and the medical world. And now that's what was so exciting to me about this technology is these academic professors wanted to see, could we commercialize it? Could we take it out into the business world and actually use it for non-academic, non-medical purposes? And I guess I didn't say this in the beginning. I'm based in Iowa. I went to the University of Northern Iowa. So it's not like we had these incredible technological innovations right at my doorstep. I couldn't walk across the street and walk into Twitter. So having the opportunity to do something that felt so exciting and new age in the middle of a cornfield was really appealing to me.
That's wow, and I can identify with that too. I'm in Indiana right now,
There you go. So
so
you
yeah,
know, right?
I'm in the middle of the cornfield, just like you are. Yeah, 100%.
Exactly.
Holy cow, what a story! All right, am I allowed? No, listen, you always have the right on this show to pass on answering a question. I just want to make sure you understand that. You can just
Yeah.
go pass. I won't ask it again because this is not a gotcha show. All right, but I'm dying right now. I feel like a kid in a candy store because I just heard that and I didn't know this coming into this interview. So. Um, Are you allowed to talk about some of the companies that you worked with and
Yeah.
which presidential campaigns you've worked with?
Yeah. So I have worked with some of the largest companies in the world. My first big dog client was Salesforce.
Hmm.
And it was right as they were transitioning to be, they'd kind of tapped out on enterprise, right? They're still like the enterprise software, but they wanted to start targeting small to mid-sized businesses. And those small to mid-sized businesses, they buy differently,
Hmm.
right? Enterprise, you're talking to salespeople, it's a whole thing. There's a whole like wooing process. Small to mid-sized business, you need to give them the materials to self-educate and to self-serve. And so we worked with Salesforce when they were transitioning from a company where you had to call and talk to a salesperson and they would give you everything that you need to know to a company that needed to provide a total experience on their website to help people figure out, can I make Salesforce work for me? Is Salesforce right for me? What products do I need? And all of that education to make sure that people could make that decision in Salesforce's favor while having all the information they needed to go forward. And so we started working with them when we were actually a fairly young company, realistically had no business, serving a company that large. But it was a great example, and we can come back to this in the podcasting as to why like the networking and the people that you meet make the most difference in the world. The only reason we got Salesforce is because I had a friend who knew what we were trying to build, who believed in what we were building, and had a friend who worked at Salesforce who he just so happened to know was looking for a solution like this. And so he gave me his friend's number. And not only that, he gave me his friend's number. And when because I didn't think we had any business working with a company like Salesforce, never made the call, came down to my office, dialed the phone, hit send, and put it in my hand before I could do anything about it, and literally forced me into a sales call with someone over at Salesforce. And the rest is history. I've been working with them since 2014. If you go to any web page on Salesforce's website, odds are good my team has done research on it and optimized it all the way down to the legalese page and terms and conditions. We are one of their longest running research vendors, and we have a great relationship with their organization.
Wow. All right, that's one heck of a story. Any chance you want to tell me which presidential candidate you're working with?
I can talk about it, yes. So we worked with a company out of Missouri. And the interesting thing about these nationwide campaigns is that you don't really work with the campaign. You work with the consultant who is
Hmm.
consulting on the campaign. So we were
Sure.
working on Ted Cruz's presidential run when he was running for the nomination. And so we were actually testing a report card uh, a report card style mailer. So imagine that you and I were neighbors, and voting record is public, not who you vote for, but the fact that you voted. That is public information. And so this was a hyper personalized piece of mail that would say Alyssa Nolte gets an A for her voting record, but her neighbor Tom gets a C because he only votes half of the time. And it had our names on the mail and it had our grades and our voting records on the mail. And so you can imagine that that was a fairly controversial piece of mail. It was the first real attempt at true hyper-personalization. This is like 2015,
Yeah.
2014. And so we were testing not only is this going to go over in Iowa because, we have all of the caucuses here in the beginning.
Yeah.
And so we were testing over like, are people going to be offended by this? Is this going to motivate them? Right. And then we were also testing, how are they perceiving this information? Are they understanding that we're not just giving out arbitrary votes, that we're using public data to give people grades on their voting history. So it was a really interesting study. Generally, we found that people were offended by this and very upset by this. So that was our recommendation, like, hey, don't do this. And they don't have to listen to our recommendation. Ultimately, they did do it. And it was like a number one trending topic on Facebook for a couple of days because people were so upset and frustrated by it. So that's one. We also did a lot of ads that talked about if you ever get like a piece of mail where, there's positive mail where it's talking about the candidate,
Hmm.
there's negative mail where it's bashing the opponent, and then there's something in the middle that they call a contrast piece. And it's basically on the front side, it's all the good stuff about your candidate. On the back side, it's all the bad stuff about the other candidate.
Right.
And so we did a huge test run of what's more effective, and contrast was the most effective. followed by negative, with positive being the least effective. So I don't know what that says about our country or our community. Um, but contrast first, then negative, then positive.
Very, very interesting. Okay. Thank you for indulging me on that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I love it. I'm fascinated by everything you're talking about right now. So, um,
You
now
can see why I turned down those jobs to
I
take on
actually
this
can.
startup,
I actually
right?
can. I probably would have done the same thing if I had
Yeah.
been sitting in your shoes, but it's amazing that you did. So, congrats on that. Sounds like it's worked out pretty well.
It has worked out. It doesn't work out for everybody, but I have been blessed that we ended up growing that business. We got acquired in 2020
Mhm.
by a company that specialized in training people how to work from home for their large organizations. And you can imagine that we got very busy in 2020,
Yeah.
very fast. And so that took me from, I had always been in like the pre-sales kind of world to the post-sales world. So now I kind of understood the full customer life cycle. How do we get customers to go from I'm interested to I'm buying to I'm seeing value to I'm ready to renew? So that more full life cycle.
Love it. And you can tell you're a podcast host because that's exactly where I was going, and you just segued yourself. So I love that.
After 100 something episodes, you you learn the flow.
It's the best part about interviewing podcasters on this show. It just makes my job easy, So, because yeah, you did mention in your bio about taking people from I'm interested to I'm buying. Now, there's not a single podcaster, influencer, yeah, work from home, internet, income person in the world that doesn't want to know the secret to doing that. Can you give any tips or help to anybody today without giving away the secret sauce? Because I know you want them to contact you for it, right?
Well, the real secret is that your customers already know how they want to buy. They know how they want to do that. Whether they can physically articulate it, whether they're telling you that, they already know the types of information they need in order to make a decision in your favor, the order that they want to receive it in, right? We all have this different way that we want to understand the world. And your role as someone is trying to sell them something is to make sure that you are selling that way. So that means uncovering the way that they want to buy and truly being able to direct their path in a way that reduces all of the friction. There's a lot of people who are trying to sell things who will put things in people's way, thinking it's something that's good for them, right? Like a form fill, for example. Everybody wants to collect a form fill. Everybody wants to collect your name and your information. But ask yourself, do I need their cell phone? Is that a friction point that is going to make or break my ability to sell? Right? And really putting yourselves in the shoes of the buyer because you know them. When I'm talking to prospective customers, I always ask them these two questions. If I walked into a coffee shop and I met someone for the first time, how would I know, in the wild that they're your customer? How would I know? How would I say to myself, oh, I have to introduce myself, this person to so and so? And what I'm looking for is, if you sell to consumers, are they moms? Are they dads? Are they kids? Are you selling to 10-year-olds who are trying to buy something? And if you tell me that you're selling to everybody because everybody needs your product, I'm going to immediately know that you have a problem and we need to solve it because niches get riches and we have to niche down and know who we're speaking to. Because if you speak to everyone, you speak to no one.
Mhm.
And then the second question I ask is, if I sat down with this person for a cup of coffee, what are they complaining about? What is their biggest like thing that they're whining about right now? And is it something that you do? Because if they are not thirsting for your product, they are probably not buying your product.
Mm. Wow. That last statement especially was very, very poignant. If they're not thirsting for your product,
Yeah.
then they're not buying your product.
Not if they want it, not if they might want it, not if you think that they should want it. You don't get to determine what people want. They do, as much as I would love to be like, everybody needs to buy my things because it's helpful to them. If they are not feeling an acute pain in their lives that your product or service would solve, there are too many other things that they're feeling that are going to distract them. And they'll maybe get to you someday, but we don't have all the time in the world to wait for them to come to us.
Wow. I love that. Absolutely love that. Okay. So, wow. This is what you've been doing. How do you take all of this? Because I know that you're not trying to run a separate business on your podcast. You already told me that you do it for the love of it. Now, do I have that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey with podcasting. So, The company that acquired us, I worked there for about 3 years and discovered I really am like certifiably unemployable. I'm really meant to just be out on my own, doing my own thing. And it was really, I chafed really hard at, having to build someone else's vision. Not saying that like there's anything wrong with being an employed person. I've never been one really.
Sure.
And so it's not a skill that I ever cultivated out of college. And one of the things is one of the guys that was working there, he wanted to be a speaker. He wanted to speak professionally and make money doing that. And so he had started a podcast, but he wasn't a podcast listener. So he didn't really have an understanding of like what it's like to be on a podcast and what podcasts are, right? He knew that podcasts were a hot topic and that people were talking about podcasts. He did not know what the vibe was of a podcast. And so I'm on this team trying to help put together this podcast for him. And it was really stressful and really hard and really miserable because he wanted such a high production value, but we didn't have the content to back it up. Right. And so when I decided to leave that company, um, I looked around the world and I said, okay, I'm restarting. What is different between 2013 when I did this the first time and now? And so much of how we sell and make decisions and buy is on personal brand. And I was super nervous and uncomfortable in this particular environment, in this virtual talking into the void
Yeah.
environment. And so I started my first podcast called Taking Back Monday with the sole intent of using it as an accountability project. I was going to interview other people. I was going to interview other people because I know that if you interview someone, they expect you to post their episode. And it was going to force me to practice and to put myself out there, which I hadn't done in a really long time. And so that's the only reason I started my podcast was basically as forcing myself to practice a skill that I knew I needed to be successful and give myself an accountability because other people were going to be on my show and they expected it. So I'm so embarrassed at my first couple of episodes. I think every good podcaster should be. Uh,
Yep.
but I found a love for the conversations I was having and the people that I was talking to. And so I'm not traditionally monetized. I guess it's probably not fair to say I'm not truly monetized. I'm not traditionally monetized simply because everything that I've monetized in the past, I have fallen out of love with. Every time I've tried to put a price tag on something that I loved, it became a job and a chore. And so I haven't monetized my podcast yet. But because of the conversations I'm having and the people that I'm meeting, I have created money related opportunities, right? I've gotten jobs, I've gotten opportunities, I've gotten the chance to speak at different, paying gigs. So the podcast itself is not monetized, but there is definitely a monetary outcome that just happens to go along with it.
Beautiful. I was going to ask you that question too. You're ahead of me. I absolutely love it. That's amazing. And you also bring up a huge, huge piece of what podcasting is about. And that is, you said you wanted to come back to it, but the networking and the relationships and the opportunities that come from it, that's something that I think is grossly underestimated by
Yeah.
people. They feel like if I don't have an ad paying me 13 cents, then I'm not monetized. And they forget about all of the rest. All,
Yeah.
like I just said, the networking and the opportunities. That's something. How early on did you recognize that and start to experience that in doing your podcast?
I really didn't experience it till I started my second one. So, my first podcast, Taking Back Monday, I always tell people is about the future of work. And as someone who came from a startup who we truly like all loved spending time together when we were in that startup. We knew about our families, we knew about everyone's kids. We were in a startup, so you weren't paid well, but we were all on the same page in that belief. And then when I went to the new company, I was like, "Oh, that is not normal. People do not get up on Monday morning so excited to go into the office and to go to work." And I experienced Sunday scaries for the first time. And I did not know, after 10 years, I didn't know that that was a thing that was new to me. And so I basically started that podcast as like a therapy session in addition to the accountability and the idea that we can love work and we can love what we can do and we can say goodbye to the Sunday scaries if only the people in our orbit have the courage to create environments where we can be high performers. So whether you're a leader yourself or you work for a leader, you need to have the courage to create that environment. So Taking Back Monday, I didn't really experience and still haven't really experienced necessarily any opportunities or um, anything that has turned into money because that was not my niche. I'm not a coach. I'm not a leadership speaker. I just enjoy the topic. So that podcast is very much just for the social, the vibes, right, of it. But when I realized that podcasting could be an entree into business development and opportunity and meeting the types of people that I would want to meet at conferences who, if I reached out to them and I said, "Hey, can we grab a cup of coffee for an hour? I'd love to talk to you," they would put me off. But as soon as I had a podcast in my niche and I said, "Hey, I have a podcast about this topic that you happen to be an expert on. I'm trying to meet you. Would you be open to coming on the show?" I reach out to 100 people. I get a 95 response rate of yes. So, it just became one of the best ways for me to get into the room of the people that I admired or the people who I wanted to, have a business relationship with. But because my niche of Taking Back Monday wasn't the right fit for that group of people, I started the new show called The Growth Signal, which was squarely in my niche because it was no longer about vibes. It was about building my personal brand as an expert in this space and connecting with the people who can help me grow my business.
I absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. That's so forward thinking of you to do that, and I love that. So the the growth signal, then I assume that you choose who you invite on the show, or you choose your guests based on that networking desire, things like that, more of a business aspect.
Absolutely. The people who I'm inviting on the growth signal are people who either have a strong depth of thought in the thought leadership area that I want to be known as a thought leader in. So I hope to be a peer of them someday, or there's someone who I think maybe I can help solve their problem. And so I treat every conversation on the growth signal as a potential customer discovery. And the same questions that I asked earlier, how would I recognize these people in the wild if I thought maybe they were my customer? And what are they complaining about? What is their biggest frustration? And so I designed that show around that entire goal, finding the people who are my people and figuring out what is their problem that's worth solving. So that show, I open up every single episode with one question. What is your hot take? And I ask them to basically tell me what is the thing that they think the entire world is missing. And that creates for great conversation, but it also gives me a lot of insight into the industry I'm trying to serve.
Nice, nice. And so then, taking back Monday, you still get to have some fun with that one.
I do. I get to have that like feel good, happy feeling of that work can be something we all enjoy and it doesn't have to be something that we hate. And so someday I would love to get into leadership speaking, so I'm playing the long game on Taking Back Monday. But for now, it is just really good conversations with smart people who are trying to create a better future.
Nice, nice. All right, and yeah, so speaking is one of your long-term goals.
It is. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, we'll have to talk more about that too. I have another podcast I got to talk to you about, but we'll do that
Perfect.
after this is over. So, all right, but that's very cool. Now, these podcasts, I mean, it's you still, and so it's even though it's still coming from you, they have very different purposes.
Yeah.
And so, how do you go about promoting them? Do you promote them? Do you promote them the same? What's the difference in how you do it? I'm just curious.
So in the beginning, I tried so hard to do like all of the things that people tell you to do, right? Like, oh, you got to do clips and you got to be on all the platforms and you got to drop it here and like all those promotion things. And it just was a little too overwhelming for me. So rather than give up and like shake, brush my hands off it and say, I can't do this, I just went back to the very basics. So I do the episode. I ask the guests to promote. I always give them, I've gotten lots of compliments on my post episode email. I will send them an email and I'll say, hey, here's your cover art. Here's the link to where your episode's going to go. Here are three AI generated bullets of what we talked about. If you would like to promote, um, guests who promote their episodes see a 300% increase in listens if you feel so inclined. And then I look to where I want to post based on where I think the audience is. So for Taking Back Monday, it's definitely more of a Facebook environment, Facebook and LinkedIn. For the growth signal, all of my audience and all of my guests are on LinkedIn. So it's almost exclusively promoted on LinkedIn. And then I always do a little write up about the episode. And then the other thing that I've just started doing is taking these interviews, because both podcasts are interview style, and I've added what I'm calling a field note. And it is essentially a voice note as if I was just texting with my audience and dropping them a voice note. And it's a reflection on my own, recollection of listening to the episode myself and connecting it to something that I'm experiencing in real life. So trying to pull back the curtain and tell them what's going on. They're usually 5 to 10 minutes long, and there's no script and there's no agenda. I'm just trying to let people see the person behind the microphone and connect with what I'm doing. And I've gotten actually so much great feedback from my community about those field notes. Those are some of their favorite episodes because it's the moments where they get to really see me as the person behind the microphone rather than the headshot on the cover art.
Nice. Nice. I love that. If you can speak to that a little, because it's unique the way you do your podcast, The Growth Signal. It comes out those several days, then you have the voice notes, but you come out 3 times a week with
Mhm.
with the episode, and then you add the voice note to all three or to one.
I only do a voice note if I can truly authentically deliver value in
Okay.
that voice note. And so what I will do is I have my 3 episodes that I'm going to put out that week, and I will look at all three and I will say, okay, do these, do I have a relevant story to tell? Can I add value by doing this voice note? So the episodes are already produced, they're already queued, everything is done. So rather than go in and make a 30-minute episode, 35 minutes or 40 minutes, I create a little mini bonus episode that goes right after, about an hour after whatever episode I decide goes live. But I've already done all the production before I've ever recorded the voice note. And I've got it queued before I've ever recorded it. So I might put out three, I might put out one, I might put out zero. So the ones that I have going out this week, I don't think I have any voice notes that go with them. Not because they weren't impactful, but because I don't have a relevant moment that I'm experiencing right now that necessarily speaks to that episode.
Interesting. I mean, that's very unique. Love the idea. Have you had any blowback from people? I mean, guests can be very sensitive. They can be very triggered. Have you ever had the situation where someone's like, "Hey, you did a voice note for these guys, but you didn't do a voice note for me"?
I have not had that. Um, but I'm fairly new to it. I'm only like 5 voice notes in, so who knows?
Okay.
But I make it clear that the point of the voice note is really meant to be as if I'm just texting the audience, right?
Mm,
I do everything I can to successfully promote every episode. I want every guest to get their flowers,
sure.
right? Sometimes the voice notes aren't necessarily like they're not episode promotions by any means. They are reflections. And sometimes they're like, I kind of disagreed with what this person said here. Here's what I'm experiencing too. So it's not
Oh,
necessarily
okay.
not necessarily something you want me to do a voice note on, um, because I want to be as authentic and real as I can. And my guests are incredible and smart, talented people. Um, and the whole point of the show is to get different perspectives. And the people who are coming on my show know that there's going to be someone who disagrees with them in the comments, and they relish that opportunity.
Nice. Nice. Great answer too. Appreciate that. And I'm certainly not picking at it. I think it's a fantastic idea. I think that more people should take control of their podcasts like that. And what I love about this particular instance and this story that you're telling is that it's your podcast. And you're like, this is what I want to do. I'm doing it this way. I don't care if I've seen anybody else do it like this before. I'm just going to do it. Now, I am curious where you got the idea from. Did you just come up with this on your own?
I did. So I was in a team meeting and we're trying to build a software product right now. And one of the things that a lot of software companies do wrong, and honestly, maybe all companies do wrong, is they build in stealth. And they think to themselves, I have to build with nobody because if someone hears about my idea, then they might steal it. And often that is the wrong approach because your audience wants to be a part of, your customers want to be a part of the build. They want to feel like you're hearing them and you're connecting with them and you're truly solving their problem. And if you do that in a back room where nobody can see it happening or give feedback on it, then how are you going to build something that truly connects with them, who speaks to their problems and their frustrations? And so we were talking about this concept of like, how do we build in public? And I finally said, you know what? I have the perfect platform. I have a podcast in which people who I think should be our buyers are our listeners. And so that's why I started these field notes. And to your point, by the way, that is the reason I keep them as separate bonus episodes and I don't put them in with the actual, it's not like an extended episode, so it's not connected. So if my guest doesn't like the field note, they don't have to share the field note. They only have to share the episode that they were on. It's a totally separate episode because it's a totally separate time. I
Yeah.
record it probably 3 or 4 weeks after the actual episode was recorded. So, it doesn't have to be a part of their narrative or their story. It's a part of mine. And I think it is important, especially on an interview podcast, that you take control of that narrative because we've all had those guests who come on and tell their whole story the whole time and they monologue the whole time and you can't get a word in edgewise and you post them, but are they really doing what you intended for your podcast to do? And for me, that was to meet smart, talented people and build my personal brand.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love the whole thing you're doing. I think it's fantastic. So, you mentioned feedback from your community. Now, do you have one big community that's the Alyssa community, or do you have a different community per podcast? Do you have Facebook groups? How are you housing your community and growing it? I'm curious.
A lot of it is just personal community. So I have, Alyssa Nolte, the personal brand, and Alyssa Nolte has these companies that she's affiliated with. But when we got acquired, I had built my entire brand behind the facade of the company we were building. So it was company first, Alyssa second.
Yeah.
And then the brand got acquired, and I almost felt like I lost my identity a little bit because we, no longer had our branding and our logos and we weren't who we were anymore. And so I didn't want that to happen again. And as long as I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I am going to be the common denominator. And so I have very intentionally built a personal brand of this is Alyssa Nolte, this is who she is, and these are the things that she is doing, rather than this is the brand and it just so happens to have Alyssa Nolte involved with it. And there's actual research to back that up. If you look at some of the most successful companies in the world and you compare the LinkedIn profile and how many followers and how active they are to the brand profile and how many followers they have and how active they are, almost always the company with the more active, followed, connected CEO is more successful than the one where their brand is more active or more connected.
Nice. Nice. Okay. And brilliant, by the way. That's actually absolutely the right move as far as I'm concerned too. Build your personal brand up because you are the product. Love that. Um, are you in terms of the social medias and the platforms out there? It sounds like you're biggest on LinkedIn. Am I getting that right?
I am biggest on LinkedIn. That is where my people are. I've tried all of the other ones. I just cannot get into it. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to go all in on this one specific brand. And maybe someday, if I figured out how to make a TikTok, I will. But for now, I'm just doom scrolling and lurking on everyone else's TikToks and Instagrams.
Lurking. Okay, I like that. Very good. All right. I always try to fit in my corny question with everybody. When it comes to doing your podcast, all right, either one, both. What is it about doing your podcast that you love the most? And what is it about doing your podcast that you just absolutely throw it out the window, hate the most?
So I love the conversations and the incredible smart people that I get to meet. I just had an episode released today, actually, in early September, and it is about a guy who was the children of hippies, and he never went to school because they didn't believe in forcing their children to do anything, so he just didn't. And then he wanted to become an FBI agent, so he went into the army. He became a Green Beret. He became an FBI agent, and he recently just uprooted his entire family to move to Panama. And so like stories I could never imagine, experiences I could never have myself. So I love that those stories and those people that I get to meet because he and I would have never met otherwise. The part that I hate, I that is hard because I used to, it's evolved. I would say in the beginning I hated the editing of
Sure.
it because I was slow at it and I felt like I should be fancier than I was. So I had all of these fancy things. I was trying to do all these intros and outros and all these things. And then I discovered that that wasn't who I authentically was. So now my podcast, we just get right into it and it closes and there's no fancy music and there's nothing special about it because that's not the point and that's not who I am as a brand. I would say now the part that I hate is feeling like I'm not doing the full service that my guests deserve, right? So like if an episode doesn't get my normal numbers, if it doesn't reach my normal echelon, I have to wonder to myself, okay, was it my timing? Was it my intro? Was it my write-up? What was the thing that is keeping this from being, a normal episode or a standout episode? And so that is really the part that I've gotten to where I'm like, am I doing everything that I'm trying to do the justice that it deserves?
Hmm. Wow. That's an awful lot of responsibility to take on when it could just be the guest.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I try to remind myself that the guests who do the best are the ones who share their episode. Their audience wants to hear
oh
from
yeah,
them. And if you share your, and that's what I always tell my guests, if you want your episode to do well, you have to share it because I will share it, but your audience wants you and they want you through my podcast or whatever other show you're doing,
right. I wish everybody understood that. It'd be so
right?
much better if everybody understood that. Um, I love that though. You brought up, being authentic and, dropping the fancy and just getting right to it. You and I had an interesting conversation at the beginning of when we first met here about pre-interviews. And I wanted to make
Yes.
sure that I brought that in real quick. I know we're backtracking a little bit, but I just love what you had to say. I think I've said it probably 100 times if I've said it once, but I love hearing it from somebody else
Yeah.
unprompted. What is your opinion and your theory and your thinking on doing pre-interviews versus not doing pre-interviews for your podcast and your guests?
For the love of God, please don't make me do a pre-interview. If I will do it, but I can tell you right now that I will not enjoy the episode as much, and neither will you, and neither will the audience. So I like to think of myself as the listener of this podcast. So I'm the host, but my entire time I'm sitting here thinking, how can I make sure that the listener, the ultimate audience, is getting the most out of this? And so I always tell people, like, I make them fill out an onboarding form, but it's really just to get them thinking about what I want them to talk about on this show. I almost literally never actually read it, and I will be upfront with them about that. I do not read the onboarding form because I want to hear. I said I open with a hot take. I want to hear your hot take for the first time on air. I want to react to it live in the same way that our audience is going to. And I always tell people what I'm looking for with your hot take is I want one of three outcomes. I want outcome number one is someone says, huh, I've never thought about it that way. Someone says, I agree with that and I can't wait to be proven right. So I'm going to keep listening. Or someone says, I disagree with this. I'm going to hate listen to this. And then I'm going to breathe fire in the comments about it. Those are the three outcomes that I want from someone's hot take. And if I can react authentically to what you're saying, I am much more likely to drive the conversation in the way that the listener is probably hearing it too. If we have a preconceived script, it is going to feel preconceived. And that is not how people want to experience podcasts. If I want a script, I'll watch Netflix. I'll get on the news. I'll listen to someone read a teleprompter. I am looking for a conversation, and I can't do that if we scripted it out.
I cannot give you enough applause for that answer. Absolutely love all of it. This is so,
It does
I,
make people
oh,
nervous and uncomfortable. I'm like, babe, I will guide you. I will not embarrass you. Like, we're gonna have a great conversation. But if I know what you're trying to sell, pitch, or push, then it won't come across authentic to the audience, and then they'll tune out.
gotcha. Gotcha. I love that because you can't have a first conversation more than once.
Right. Exactly.
If it's your first conversation, it is 100% authentic. You're as surprised as people are that are listening. And I love the fact that with all of it, you're putting your listeners first because it isn't about you, it isn't about even the guest, it's about the listener.
You could be the smartest
Yeah.
person in the world with the most interesting things to say, but if no one is going to give you a chance to say it, then it's like, why bother?
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Beautiful. Fantastic answer. Love it. Thank you for sharing that with everybody. All right. Very, very cool. I still have one more question for you, but I want to get your contact info out and everything else because I don't really know where
Yeah.
we're going to go with that last question. So we'll just see. How do people find you, reach you, look you up, contact you, etc.?
Come find me on LinkedIn, send me a connection request. I am always down to talk to people, have a chat. I love to talk about new, interesting ideas. So come talk with me about that. Just don't pitch slap me with something that you're trying to sell. Otherwise, we'll be good to go. And then you can send me an email. My email is alyssa@alyssanolte.com.
Okay. Pitch slap. Okay. I've never actually heard that before.
Oh,
I
someone came on my show and that was their hot take of like, if all you know how to do is pitch slap, then you might as well give up today. I was like, this is
oh
great.
my gosh. Okay, so no pitch slapping, but
No pitch
it's
slapping,
okay
but
to
real
contact you.
conversation. Please reach out to me. I'd love to have it.
That's great. All right. Very, very cool. So you've given a lot of advice throughout this entire interview to anybody else who's, doing a podcast. So whatever you got that's left still in the tank, maybe your absolute, best most personal one even. But what is your best piece of advice for folks who are out there podcasting that are not quite where you are yet?
I saw this question. I think we you might have sent it ahead of time, and I'm having a really hard time honestly answering it because I think everybody's podcasting journey is just a little bit, but you have to understand and define what success looks like for you. And you have to be very explicit about what that looks like and be willing to not move the goalpost. So if for you success is a fully monetized podcast that pays your bills and you are willing to do what it takes to get there, knowing that it takes time and it's not something that's instantaneous and none of us are most likely going to be Joe Rogan. We're not going to get there and that's okay. But what does success look like for you? And are you actually willing to do what it takes to get there? There's one of my favorite books of all time. It's called The Dip by Seth Godin. And it talks about how the greatest people in the world are great, not because of, their exceeding talent or who they have built relationships with. They are great because they are willing to say no to other things so they can say yes to the right things. The greatest athlete in the world, the greatest running back in the world, doesn't play 45 other sports and go out with the boys on the weekend. He focuses on becoming the greatest running back in the world. And so, if you want to be a great podcaster, you need to realize that that means saying no to some of the fancy things, saying no to the promotion you can't do, saying no to picking up a new hobby, saying no to going out with your family. It means setting yourself up to be the greatest in the world if that's what you so choose. And the world doesn't have to be anything more than your community, your niche, your network, your country, wherever you want it to be. But whatever is your world, if you want to be the greatest, you have to learn to define success and be unwavering and unwilling to move the goalpost.
And that was a question you weren't ready to answer?
Yeah, I just came up with that just now.
Because
This,
that
this is
was
why we don't
great.
do pre-interview. I don't do pre-interview. I'm better off the cuff.
That was great. That was absolutely great. I love it. All right, folks, Alyssa Nolte at alyssanolte.com and on LinkedIn, host of Taking Back Monday and The Growth Signal. Go check out her podcasts. They're excellent. I've had a chance to listen to them. Alyssa, thank you so much for coming on, for being so incredibly authentic, and for being you, and for being open and honest about all of it. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been excited to have a chat.
Thanks. Folks, this is another awesome episode of the Podcaster Nation. And the reason that we have such fantastic podcasters on here with these great messages is because this is the podcast that's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. Folks, we showed again today that this truly is the place where the rising tide raises all ships. So keep sailing.